He thought she was just another careless employee, a single mother late to work for the third time. But when she dropped her bag, running out in tears, he found a note written in a child's shaky handwriting. "Mom, don't cry today. I'll be brave for you." That was the moment everything changed. If this story touches your heart, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe to Between Raindrops Stories. Every story here is a reminder that behind every mistake, there's a story you haven't heard yet. The rain had started before sunrise, not the soft kind that people romanticize, but the cold, relentless kind that seeps into your bones and makes everything harder. For most of the city, it was just another weekday. For Claire Bennett, it was another morning she couldn't afford to mess up. Her 6-year-old son, Tommy, sat at the small kitchen table, swinging his legs and drawing superheroes with his broken crayons while she scrambled to pack his lunch. "Mom," he said, his voice small, "you forgot the juice box." She paused mid-motion and sighed, glancing at the nearly empty fridge. "No, honey, we're just out. I'll grab some after work, okay?" He nodded, pretending not to notice the worry in her eyes. He was used to this version of his mom, tired, rushing, trying her best to keep the world from falling apart. Her phone buzzed on the counter, a text from her supervisor. "You're cutting it close again, Claire." Her stomach sank. She looked at the clock, 8:24 a.m. Her bus came at 8:30. If she missed it, the next one wouldn't arrive for another 20 minutes. "Tommy, come on, grab your jacket." They hurried down the narrow apartment hallway, Claire's heels clicking too loud against the floor. Rain hit the windows in sharp, rhythmic taps. She bundled Tommy in his jacket, kissed the top of his hair, and whispered, "Be brave for me today, okay?" He grinned, missing his front tooth. "Always." She smiled, though her throat ached. "That's my superhero." By the time she got off the bus near the Harrison and Vale building, her hair was damp, her coat clinging to her shoulders. She fixed herself in the reflection of the glass doors, wiped her face, straightened her collar, and forced a breath. Inside, the lobby buzzed with the hum of elevators, designer shoes, and people who never had to check bus schedules. She smiled politely at the receptionist, a woman who always seemed to look at her with the quiet judgment of someone who never ran late. "Morning, Claire," she said, her tone neutral. "Mr. Vale's in early, and he asked for the full team by 9. Her heart thudded. "I'll be at my desk in 2 minutes." The elevator doors closed, trapping her with her reflection. Her makeup had smudged under her eyes. Her hair stuck to her cheek. She rubbed it away with the sleeve of her coat, whispering to herself, "You can do this." But when the elevator doors opened, Ethan Vale was standing right there, tall, sharp, and calm in that terrifying way people with power often were. He glanced at his watch. 41 minutes late, Miss Bennett. Her throat dried. "Mr. Vale, my son was—" He didn't even let her finish. "You've been late 3 times in the past month. I can't run a company on excuses." The other employees passing by froze in silence, pretending not to watch. "Sir, I promise it won't happen again," she said softly, clutching her bag to her chest. "I just had to—" "Claire," he interrupted, tone level but cutting. "This firm is built on trust, reliability, and time. If I can't count on you to be here when you're supposed to, I can't keep you." The words dropped like stones. She felt heat rise to her face. "Please, Mr. Vale, I need this job. My son—" "This isn't about your son," he said firmly. "It's about responsibility. You'll receive your final paycheck today. HR will process the paperwork." Something broke inside her, not loudly, just quietly enough that no one could see it. She nodded, blinking back tears that burned like acid. "Yes, sir." When she turned to leave, her old leather bag slipped from her shoulder, spilling papers, pens, and small scraps of her life across the polished floor. For a moment she froze, then knelt to gather everything as quickly as possible, her hands trembling. Ethan didn't move to help. He simply stood there, silent, watching. When she was done, she whispered, "I'm sorry," and hurried out. As she passed the glass walls, her reflection looked like someone else, a ghost of the woman who'd walked in just an hour before. Downstairs, the HR manager barely looked up when she handed over her ID. A printed envelope slid across the counter. "Your final pay, sign here." That was it. 11 months of hard work reduced to a signature and a sealed envelope. She stepped outside into the rain, the city noise swallowing her whole. At the crosswalk, her bus was already pulling away. She didn't chase it. She just stood there, soaked, holding the envelope tight against her chest as if it could keep her warm. When she finally got home that evening, Tommy was waiting by the door. "Mom, you're home early," he said, running into her arms. She hugged him tightly, her face buried in his hair. "Yeah," she whispered. "Mom got home early today." He looked up at her. "Did work make you sad again?" She smiled weakly. "Just tired, sweetheart." He nodded, then dug into his backpack. "I made you something." It was a folded piece of paper drawn in blue crayon, a stick figure of a smiling woman next to a smaller boy. Over it, in his best handwriting, "Don't cry today, Mom. I'll be brave for you." She held it, speechless. When he ran off to the couch to turn on the TV, Claire quietly wiped her tears and taped the drawing to the fridge. The apartment was small, but in that moment it felt like the only world that still made sense. The next morning, in the spotless corner office of Ethan Vale, the day began as it always did, precise, timed, efficient. Until his assistant knocked. "Sir, we cleared Miss Bennett's desk. These were found under her workstation." She placed a small box on his desk, a mug, a photo of a boy, and a folder of sketches from a company design challenge she never submitted. His eyes flicked over the items with practiced detachment, but something about the photo, the little boy with the missing tooth, stopped him. He picked up the picture. The boy was holding a handmade sign that said, "Mom's my hero." He set it down, frowning, uncomfortable, even irritated at the tug of emotion. Then he noticed a folded scrap of paper stuck to the side of her mug. He unfolded it absently. In childish handwriting, written in bright blue crayon, "Mom, don't cry today. I'll be brave for you." He froze. The office around him went silent, the hum of the city fading behind the glass. Ethan Vale, a man who'd built walls of marble and discipline around his heart, felt something stir that hadn't moved in years. He turned the note over, as if expecting logic to explain it. But there was none, just a child's words, simple, honest, and impossible to ignore. That night when the office was empty, he stayed late pretending to work. But every time he tried to focus, his eyes drifted back to the note. He told himself he didn't believe in personal problems, that emotions were distractions, that sympathy made leaders weak. But for the first time, he wondered if maybe he'd confused strength with distance. He searched a personnel file, scrawling through lines of data that suddenly felt human. Name, Claire Bennett. Position, administrative support. Emergency contact, Tommy Bennett, age 6. Under previous employment, he saw a pattern. Short-term jobs, frequent relocations, no references. He knew that life. He had lived it once. A boy with a single mother who'd fought to keep the lights on while he sat in dark kitchens doing homework by candlelight. He shut his laptop slowly and stared out at the skyline. Somewhere below those glittering towers was a woman sitting in a tiny apartment, tucking her son into bed and pretending she was okay. He ran his hand through his hair and exhaled. "What are you doing, Ethan?" he muttered to himself. But when he reached for his keys that night, he already knew the answer. The rain had returned by the time he parked outside her building, a small brick complex with peeling paint and flickering lights in the hallway. Through a fogged window on the second floor, he saw her. Sitting on a couch, Tommy asleep in her lap, a blanket wrapped around them both. She looked peaceful. Tired, but peaceful. Ethan leaned back in the driver's seat. Rain tapping against the windshield like distant applause. He didn't knock. He didn't call. He just sat there, watching for a moment longer than he should have. And for the first time in years, the man who thought he had everything realized how much he'd forgotten what human felt like. He went back to the office the next morning, set the coffee on his desk, and said to his assistant, "Reinstate Claire Bennett, full pay. Tell HR it was an administrative review error." The assistant blinked. "Sir, you personally—" "I know what I did, and now fix it." When the assistant left, Ethan took out the note again, folded carefully in his hand, and smiled faintly. "Thank you, Tommy," he whispered. And for once, it wasn't sarcasm. It was something else, something that sounded a lot like grace.
The news reached Claire 2 days later. She was standing in line at the grocery store, counting the last few bills in her wallet, when her phone buzzed with an email from HR at Harrison and Vale. "After administrative review, your termination has been reversed. You are reinstated effective immediately, with full pay." She blinked, reading it twice, then a third time. It didn't make sense. The man who had barely looked at her, who had dismissed her like a line item, was now reversing his decision? There had to be a mistake. Still, the relief hit her so fast she almost forgot to breathe. Her heart pounded as she whispered under her breath, "Oh my God, thank you." Tommy looked up from the small packet of stickers he was holding. "What's wrong, Mom?" She smiled through sudden tears. "Nothing, sweetheart. It's okay." But even as she said it, something about the email gnawed at her. People like Ethan Vale didn't make mistakes. They made decisions. And people like her didn't just get second chances. Not in that world. The next morning, she walked through the glass doors of Harrison and Vale again. Every step echoed with quiet nerves. The receptionist's eyes widened slightly, but said nothing. Claire gave her a polite nod and went straight to her old desk, where her nameplate still sat, untouched. Her computer had already been reactivated, her drawer reorganized. Everything was exactly as she'd left it, except for a small white envelope resting on her keyboard. No name, no signature, just a note inside that read, "Welcome back. Everyone deserves a fair chance." She blinked, reading it twice, then a third time. It didn't make sense. The man who had barely looked at her, who had dismissed her like a line item, was now reversing his decision? There had to be a mistake. Still, the relief hit her so fast she almost forgot to breathe. Her heart pounded as she whispered under her breath, "Oh my God, thank you." Tommy looked up from the small packet of stickers he was holding. "What's wrong, Mom?" She smiled through sudden tears. "Nothing, sweetheart. It's okay." But even as she said it, something about the email gnawed at her. People like Ethan Vale didn't make mistakes. They made decisions. And people like her didn't just get second chances. Not in that world. The next morning, she walked through the glass doors of Harrison and Vale again. Every step echoed with quiet nerves. The receptionist's eyes widened slightly, but said nothing. Claire gave her a polite nod and went straight to her old desk, where her nameplate still sat, untouched. Her computer had already been reactivated, her drawer reorganized. Everything was exactly as she'd left it, except for a small white envelope resting on her keyboard. No name, no signature, just a note inside that read, "Welcome back. Everyone deserves a fair chance." She frowned, her fingers trembling slightly. She looked around the office, but no one met her eyes. She spent the day working quietly, trying to stay invisible. But that afternoon, when she took her lunch break, she noticed something strange. Her overdue health insurance payment had cleared automatically, and later, her rent statement showed a credit adjustment she couldn't explain. It was too much to be coincidence. She didn't believe in miracles. She had learned long ago that life didn't hand them out freely. Someone had done this, and deep down she already knew who. That evening, as Ethan walked through the dim halls of his building, his assistant fell into step beside him. "Sir, the HR reinstatement went through. Miss Bennett is back at work." He nodded. "Good." She looked surprised, the assistant said carefully. "That's an understatement." He hesitated, then said, You also cleared her back pay and the rent balance. I did what was necessary. No one needs to know. You really think she won't figure it out?" He stopped at the elevator, expression unreadable. "I'm not doing it for her gratitude." The elevator doors opened. He stepped inside, the faint reflection of himself in the mirrored wall, looking almost unfamiliar. Not the cold executive, not the untouchable CEO, just a man quietly trying to make something right. 2 weeks passed before Claire worked up the courage to face him. She waited until late one evening, after most of the office had emptied. The skyline glowed through the windows like a sea of stars. Ethan's light was still on. She stood outside his door for a full minute, then knocked softly. "Come in," his voice called. When she entered, he was standing by the window, jacket off, sleeves rolled to his elbows, eyes distant. For a moment, he looked almost human. "Miss Bennet," he said, turning, "I see you are still here." "Yes, sir," she said quietly. I wanted to thank you for giving me another chance." He shook his head. "Don't thank me. You earned it." She hesitated. "And the rent adjustment, the insurance payment. What about them?" "I didn't ask for help. I don't want pity." His expression softened. It wasn't pity. It was overdue correction. "I don't understand." Ethan exhaled. "You don't have to. Just know this. I made a decision too quickly. It wasn't about you. It was about everything I thought I knew about people." "And now?" "Now," he said quietly, "I'm trying to unlearn some of that." The silence between them stretched, awkward, fragile, but not cold. Finally, she nodded. "For what it's worth, I'd forgive you." The words hit him harder than he expected. He cleared his throat. "You don't owe me that." "No," she said softly, "but maybe I need to give it anyway." She turned to leave, but then paused at the door. "You should tell people when you do something good, Mr. Vale. Not all deaths are financial." And then she was gone. He stood there, alone, the city reflected in the glass, realizing that forgiveness felt heavier than guilt. Days later, Claire came home from work to find a package on her doorstep. No return label, just her name. Inside was a small cardboard box filled with art supplies, markers, paints, brushes, and a note in neat handwriting that read, "For Tommy. Brave boys deserve bright colors." She smiled, tears blurring her vision. Tommy gasped when he saw it. "Mom, look at all this. It's like Christmas." She laughed. "Maybe someone out there has a big heart." He frowned thoughtfully. "Like the man from your work?" She froze. "What makes you say that? I saw his name on your paper last week. You smiled when you looked at it." She didn't answer. She just tousled his hair and said, "Finish your homework, detective." But that night, when Tommy was asleep, she sat by the window, staring out at the dark city skyline, wondering if Ethan Vale ever looked up from his world of glass and steel long enough to see the stars. Meanwhile, Ethan's world was changing too. In small, unfamiliar ways. He started noticing things he'd once ignored: the receptionist who stayed late to afford nursing school, the janitor who hummed to himself while polishing the floors, the interns who hid anxiety behind coffee cups. He began leaving anonymous notes of encouragement. Small things, quiet things, like the one that had changed him. He wasn't trying to fix anyone anymore. He was trying to listen. Nora, his assistant, noticed. "You're different these days, sir." He looked up from his desk, smiling faintly. "Maybe I'm just remembering who I used to be." One Saturday morning, as he was locking his car outside a local grocery store, he heard a familiar voice behind him. "Mr. Vale?" He turned. Claire stood there, holding Tommy's hand, a grocery bag slung over her shoulder. For a moment, neither knew what to say. "Shopping for yourself now?" she teased gently. He smiled. "Trying to learn." Tommy peeked from behind her leg.
Mom says you're her boss. He crouched slightly. I was. Now we just work in the same building. Tommy grinned. Did you know my mom's the fastest typer in her office? He chuckled. I believe it. Claire laughed softly, shaking her head. You're going to embarrass me. Tommy puffed his chest. She's the best mom ever. Even when people are mean to her, she still smiles. The words landed heavier than the boy realized. Ethan's throat tightened. She sounds pretty amazing, he said quietly. She is, Tommy said proudly. Claire squeezed her son's shoulder, whispering, Why don't you go grab a cart, buddy? When the boy ran off, she looked back at Ethan. You didn't have to stop that day, but thank you for doing it anyway. He met her gaze. You don't need to thank me, Claire. You just need to promise me something. What? Don't let people like me make you doubt yourself again. She smiled faintly. Deal. As Tommy came back, tugging at her hand, Ethan said softly, Take care of that boy. He's special. I know, she said, glancing at her son. He's my reason for everything. He smiled, watching them walk away through the morning sunlight. The woman he'd once dismissed, now teaching him more about grace than any fortune ever could. That night, Ethan opened his desk drawer at home. Inside, carefully folded, was the crayon note. He smoothed it flat, the blue letters slightly faded. Mom, don't cry today. I'll be brave for you. He smiled and whispered to the empty room,
Looks like your mom's not the only one learning to be brave. He tucked it back into the drawer, this time not as a reminder of guilt.
The weeks that followed felt almost surreal for Claire. Her life, once teetering on the edge of chaos, began to find a fragile balance. Each morning, she woke before dawn, packed Tommy's lunch, caught her bus on time, and arrived at work before the office lights even came on. For the first time in years, she felt steady, grounded, almost hopeful. But behind that fragile calm, something kept her awake at night. A quiet question that wouldn't let go. Why had Ethan Vale changed his mind? She saw him in passing sometimes, through glass conference room walls or stepping into the elevator surrounded by executives. He never looked at her with the cold distance from before, but he didn't look at her the way other men did either. There was something else in his gaze now, a kind of quiet acknowledgement, respect, maybe, or something he hadn't yet figured out how to name. One Friday afternoon, just before closing, she was startled when his assistant appeared at her desk. Miss Bennett, Mr. Vale would like to see you. Her stomach dropped. Now? Yes, ma'am. The walk to his office felt longer than usual. Every step echoed through her nerves. When she entered, Ethan was seated at his desk, jacket off, shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked up, offering the faintest of smiles. Relax, he said, noticing her tense posture. You're not in trouble. I exhaled, half laughing. That's not what my heartbeat thinks. He chuckled softly. Sit down, please. She obeyed, clasping her hands in her lap. I've been reviewing internal performance reports, and I noticed you've been consistently going above your expected workload. Accuracy, turnaround time, client satisfaction, all well above the average. She blinked, caught off guard. I just do my job, sir. He smiled faintly. You do more than that, which is why I want to offer you a promotion. Her heart stopped. Promotion? Yes, executive coordinator. It comes with a salary increase, benefits, and flexible hours. She stared at him. Flexible hours? For when your son needs you. The words hit harder than he intended. Her throat tightened. Mr. Vale, I can't. He interrupted gently. You can. You've earned it. You just need to say yes. She hesitated, every instinct screaming not to trust what felt too good to be real. Life that taught her that nothing came free. Why me, she asked finally, out of everyone here? He met her eyes, calm, unflinching. Because I remind you of someone I used to know. Her brow furrowed.
Someone important? He nodded slowly. My mother. The admission surprised them both. He looked away, his voice softer now. She raised me alone, worked 2 jobs, never asked for help. She used to say, "Don't expect fairness from the world, Ethan. Give it instead." I forgot that somewhere along the way. Claire's voice was barely a whisper. "And you remembered? Because of me?" He smiled faintly. Because of a little boy's note. Silence filled the room, heavy, fragile, and real. Finally, Claire spoke, her tone steady. "I don't want this because you feel guilty, sir. I want it because I earned it." "You did," he said firmly. "This isn't charity, it's recognition." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Then I'll take it." His smile, small but genuine this time, reached his eyes. "Good. HR will contact you Monday. And Claire, congratulations." She stood, still dazed, and said quietly, "Thank you for believing in me." When she left, the room felt strangely emptier, as though she'd taken something with her that he hadn't realized he needed. Over the next few weeks, Claire's new role transformed her life. For the first time in years, she could breathe. She could take Tommy out for pizza on Fridays, buy him the good watercolor paints he'd wanted, and pay bills before the due date. And yet she couldn't ignore the feeling that Ethan was quietly watching over her, not as a boss, but as someone who genuinely cared whether she was okay. It made her grateful. It also scared her. One rainy Thursday evening, she stayed late to finish a report. The office was empty except for Ethan, whose light was still on. When she passed by his door, she saw him sitting at his desk, no laptop, no phone, just staring out the window. Something about his posture made her pause. She knocked softly. "Long day?" He glanced over, smiling wearily. "They all are." She stepped inside. "You could go home, you know. CEOs are allowed to rest." He leaned back. "And do what? Stare at a wall in silence?" She frowned. "You live alone?" He said, "Always have. My mother passed years ago. I never really learned how to be close to people again after that." Claire hesitated, then sat across from him. "Maybe it's not too late to learn." He looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. "Maybe," he said softly. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was peaceful. The next morning, Claire's world shattered again. She was in the middle of a meeting when her phone buzzed repeatedly. 3 missed calls, then a text. "This is Lincoln Elementary. Your son had an accident during recess. Please come immediately." Her vision blurred. Oh my God. Without thinking, she grabbed her bag and ran. By the time she reached the hospital, her heart was pounding so hard she could barely breathe. Tommy was in a bed, his leg bandaged, eyes red from crying. A nurse explained he'd fallen from the monkey bars and fractured his ankle. Not serious, but painful. When she saw him, she broke down completely. "Mom, I'm okay," he said, trying to smile through tears. "It just hurts a little." She kissed his forehead, her hands trembling. "You scared me, baby." The doctor entered, clipboard in hand. "He'll need a few weeks of rest and some physical therapy. You might want to consider in-home care for a while." "In-home care?" she repeated, panic rising. "I can't—" "In-home care." A voice interrupted from the doorway. "I'll handle it." Claire turned and froze. Ethan stood there, his suit slightly wrinkled, rain still dripping from his coat. How did you know?" she stammered. He held her company phone. "The school called your office. I happened to answer." She blinked, still stunned. "You didn't have to come. I wanted to," he said simply. "Is he okay?" She nodded, emotion tightening her throat. "He'll be fine, just a small fracture." Ethan looked at the boy and smiled gently. "Hey, chap, you gave us all a scare." He grinned shyly. "I didn't mean to. I was pretending to be Spider-Man." He chuckled. "Next time, pick a superhero who doesn't fall from buildings." Even Claire couldn't help laughing through her tears. After the doctor left, Ethan quietly stepped aside to the hallway with her. I can cover his therapy sessions. It's nothing, he said softly. Please don't, sir, she said quickly. You've done enough already. Claire. No, she said, her voice breaking. I can't keep letting you fix everything. I need to do some of it myself. He paused, then nodded slowly. You're right. She looked down, guilt flickering in her eyes. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to sound ungrateful. I know, he said. You're just strong. She looked up. Sometimes I wish I didn't have to be. He smiled faintly. Yeah, I know that feeling. They stood there in silence, two people from opposite worlds, both realizing that strength wasn't about control, it was about care. Later that night, as she tucked Tommy into bed, he asked sleepily, Mom, was that man your friend? She hesitated. I think so. He looked at you the way heroes look at people they're saving, he murmured before drifting off. Her heart ached. Maybe he's the one being saved, she whispered as she brushed his hair. Back in his penthouse, Ethan stood by the window, city lights glittering below. He should have felt powerful, untouchable. Instead, all he felt was human. He took out the folded note from his desk, Tommy's note, and stared at the uneven blue letters. Mom, don't cry today. I'll be brave for you. He smiled softly. Looks like it's my turn to be brave too, kid. Because for the first time in years, Ethan Vale wasn't just helping someone else rebuild their life, he was rebuilding his own.
It came tangled with admiration, frustration, and something else she refused to admit, a feeling that scared her even more than failure. She caught herself looking for him, listening for his voice down the hall, wondering what he was thinking when he lingered just a second too long before saying goodbye. It was getting harder to pretend this was just work. Ethan wasn't immune to it either. He'd built a company worth billions and an image even stronger. But lately that armor felt paper-thin around her. Every time he saw Claire, tired but smiling, juggling deadlines and motherhood, something inside him softened. He'd never been married, never even come close. Work had been his world. And yet here was a woman who'd lost almost everything and still found reasons to laugh. He couldn't stop thinking about her, or the boy. He'd visited Tommy at the hospital twice since the accident. Once as a CEO checking in, once because he couldn't stay away. Tommy had started calling him Mr. E, and Ethan pretended not to like it, but secretly it warmed him more than he cared to admit. Then, one morning, everything changed. Claire arrived at work to find a sealed envelope on her desk. Inside was an invitation. Employee Excellence Awards, Friday, 7 p.m. Dress formal, attendance required. At the bottom, signed in neat handwriting, E. Vale. She frowned. She'd never been invited to something like that before. But when Friday arrived, she ironed her only decent dress, navy blue, slightly worn but still elegant, and told Tommy, Mommy's got something important tonight. He grinned. You're going to win something, right? She laughed softly. I doubt that, sweetheart. But she wished she could believe him. The event was held in the company's grand hall, chandeliers glittering, soft music playing, executives in tailored suits, laughter echoing off marble floors. Claire felt out of place instantly. She hovered near the back, sipping water, clutching her purse like a shield. Then Ethan appeared, in a black tuxedo, confident but relaxed, scanning the crowd, until his gaze found her. For a second, everything around them faded. The noise, the lights, the people, gone. Just him, just her. Ms. Bennett, you clean up well, he said, offering a smile. She blushed. I'd say the same, but I think that tux is doing most of the work. He chuckled. Come on, I want you to meet someone. He guided her toward a stage at the front where the company's senior board sat. Before she could process it, Ethan took the microphone. Good evening, everyone. The crowd fell silent. I've given many speeches in this room about profits, growth, and innovation, but tonight I want to talk about something we've almost forgotten, the people who make those things possible. He paused, scanning the audience until his eyes landed on her. Sometimes, he continued, one person reminds you that success isn't built in glass towers. It's built in small apartments, late nights, and quiet sacrifices that no one sees. A murmur spread through the room. This year's recognition, he said, voice steady, goes to someone who taught me what resilience really looks like. Someone who showed that strength isn't loud, it's steady. He gestured toward her. Claire Bennett. The crowd erupted in applause. Claire froze, her throat closed, eyes wide. What? Come up here, Ethan said gently, smiling. The room blurred around her as she walked toward the stage. Her hands shook as he handed her the plaque. You deserve this, he said softly. Every word. Tears stung her eyes. I don't know what to say. Then don't, he whispered. Just take the moment. After the ceremony, the room buzzed with congratulations, but beneath the smiles and champagne, Claire's heart was racing. Something about his speech, the way he'd looked at her, the way he said, reminds me, felt personal. And when she went home that night, she couldn't shake the thought that maybe there was more behind his kindness than she knew. The next morning, while sorting files in the break room, she overheard two executives whispering near the doorway. Did you hear? Vale's been paying that woman's rent since February. No way. HR confirmed it. He's got it coded as a discretionary fund transfer. Claire froze. The folder slipped from her hands, paper scattered across the floor. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Her rent, her insurance, her second chance. All of it, him. She felt her stomach twist. It wasn't kindness. It was pity. It was guilt wrapped in generosity. She walked straight to his office. Ethan looked up, surprised. Claire? She stood in the doorway, eyes burning. You've been paying my rent? His expression shifted instantly. Who told you that? So it's true. Claire, don't you dare lie to me right now. He stood slowly, his calm voice now careful. Yes, I helped, because I could. Because you could? Do you hear yourself? You've been treating my life like a side project. That's not what this is. Then what is it? She cut in. Charity? Guilt? Redemption for firing me the first time? His jaw tightened. It's not about guilt. It's about what, Ethan? She cried. Fixing me? Saving the poor single mom you felt bad for? The silence that followed was deafening. He opened his mouth, then stopped, because for the first time, he didn't have an answer. She laughed bitterly. You don't even know, do you? Claire. No, you don't get to call me that. You don't get to fix me, Ethan. You don't get to decide what I need. And with that, she turned and walked out. The sound of her heels fading down the marble hallway was louder than any argument he'd ever lost. That night, Ethan sat in his penthouse, surrounded by silence. The city lights below him sparkled like they always did, but tonight they felt distant, hollow. He poured a drink, but didn't touch it. Instead, he took out the folded blue note, creased, worn, but still legible. Mom, don't cry today. I'll be brave for you. His hands trembled. He whispered to the empty room, It looks like I'm the one who needs to be brave now. The next day, Claire didn't come to work, nor the next. HR said she'd taken unpaid leave. No one knew if she was coming back. But Ethan knew one thing. He couldn't let it end this way. He'd made mistakes before, business ones, personal ones, but never one that mattered this much. He grabbed his coat, his car keys, and that crumpled blue note. This time he wasn't driving to fix her life. He was driving to tell her the truth. Not the kind that came from guilt, but from something much more terrifying, something honest, something real.
It was nearly midnight when Ethan Vale's car pulled into the narrow street lined with aging apartment buildings. The rain was back, a steady drizzle, falling like the sky itself was trying to apologize. He parked outside the faded brick complex where Claire Bennett lived, his windshield wipers slicing through reflections of streetlights and puddles. For a long moment, he just sat there, hands gripping the steering wheel, heart hammering harder than any boardroom showdown ever had. He'd faced investors worth billions, adversaries ruthless enough to bury him alive in lawsuits, but nothing had ever terrified him like the idea of knocking on her door and hearing silence on the other side. Still, he had to try. For once in his life, he had to say the words before it was too late. The stairwell smelled faintly of damp paint and old memories. He found her apartment by the soft glow of a nightlight through the window, the one Tommy always kept on. He took a breath and knocked. At first, nothing. Then, a rustle. A cautious voice. "Who is it?" "It's Evening," he said quietly. There was a pause, then the sound of a lock turning. The door opened just a few inches, a chain still fastened, and her face appeared in the gap, tired and tear-streaked. "What are you doing here?" she whispered. "I needed to see you." "You shouldn't have come." "Maybe not, but I couldn't stay away." She sighed, leaning her forehead against the door. "You should have just let me go." "I can't do that." "Why not?" "Because," he said softly, "some mistakes you fix with money. Others, you fix by showing up." Her eyes flickered. Pain, anger, confusion. "You think showing up now makes it right?" "No, but it's a start." She unlatched the chain, opening the door slowly. Her apartment was dim, soft light from the kitchen, the faint sound of a cartoon paused on the TV. Tommy's drawings covered the fridge, and a pair of tiny sneakers sat by the couch. Ethan stepped inside quietly, rain still dripping from his coat. Claire crossed her arms. "Say what you came to say." He took a deep breath. "You were right. About everything. I tried to fix things the only way I knew how. With money, control, solutions. That's all I've ever done. But you don't fix people that way. You don't love people that way." She looked up, startled. "Love?" He met her eyes. "Yes, love. That's what this became somewhere along the line. And I didn't know how to handle it." Her throat tightened. "You're confusing guilt for love, Ethan." He shook his head. "No, I've lived with guilt my whole life. This isn't that." He hesitated, voice breaking slightly. "After my mother died, I told myself I'd never let anyone need me again, because if they did, they could leave. They could break me. So I built a fortress around myself, and I thought it made me strong." He exhaled. "But then I met you, and your son, and I realized I've spent half my life mistaking isolation for peace." Claire's eyes shimmered. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because," he said softly, "because you deserve to hear it. Because you changed me, and you didn't even mean to. Because when that little boy wrote that note, he wasn't just talking to his mother. He was talking to a stranger who desperately needed to hear the same thing." He reached into his coat pocket, pulling out the crumpled piece of paper. It was worn now, the edges softened from being folded too many times. "Mom, don't cry today. I'll be brave for you." He held it out to her. "I've carried this every day since you dropped it. It reminded me that strength doesn't mean never falling apart. It means showing up even when you're afraid." Claire covered her mouth, tears spilling over. "You kept it all this time?" He nodded. "It's the only thing I've ever had that reminded me who I want to be." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The rain whispered against the windows like an audience holding its breath. Finally, she whispered, "You don't owe me anything, Ethan. You've already done more than I ever asked. I don't want to owe you anything. I just want to be part of your life, if you'll let me." Before she could answer, a sleepy voice came from the hallway. "Mom?" They both turned. Tommy stood there in his pajamas, rubbing his eyes. "Hey, buddy," Claire said softly, crouching down. "You should be in bed." He blinked, then looked at Ethan. "Mr. E, what are you doing here?" Ethan smiled faintly. "I came to see your mom." Tommy tilted his head. "Are you going to make her cry again?" The question hit like a punch. Claire's eyes widened. "Tommy!" But Ethan crouched to meet the boy's gaze. "No, kiddo, not this time. I came to say I'm sorry." Tommy studied him seriously, then nodded. Okay, but you have to bring donuts next time. Ethan chuckled through a choked breath. Deal. The boy grinned, satisfied, and then turned and padded back to his room. The sound of his door closing left only silence between them again. Claire exhaled, half laughing through tears. He's honest. He's brilliant, Ethan said, smiling softly, like his mom. She shook her head, voice trembling. You make everything complicated. He stepped closer. No, you made everything real. Her eyes met his, anger gone, replaced with exhaustion and something gentler. She whispered, What if I'm still angry? Then I'll wait, he said simply, as long as it takes. And what if I can't forgive you? He swallowed. Then I'll keep showing up until you can. Her voice cracked. You really mean that? He nodded. For once in my life, yeah, I do. She looked down at the note in her hands, tracing the faded crayon lines. Her voice was barely audible. Tommy always says this was his magic paper, that it makes people brave. Ethan smiled faintly. Then I guess it worked. She glanced up, eyes glistening. For both of us. They stood there, inches apart, two broken people learning slowly that healing doesn't come through perfection, but through presence. And when she finally whispered, Stay, it wasn't just an invitation, it was forgiveness. He hesitated for a heartbeat, then stepped forward, resting his forehead gently against hers. I was hoping you'd say that, he murmured. Hours later, the rain had stopped. The city was quiet again, clean, renewed. Ethan sat on the couch with Tommy asleep beside him, a cartoon still flickering softly on the TV. Claire came from the kitchen with 2 mugs of coffee, handing him one. For the first time, she looked peaceful. Do you still think you can fix people? She teased lightly. He smiled. No, but I think sometimes people fix each other, without even meaning to. She leaned against him. You're learning. He chuckled. I've had a good teacher. They sat there in silence, the hum of the city below them, and for once, the noise inside both of them was quiet. Outside, the clouds began to break, and through the open window, the faintest trace of sunlight poured in, warm and golden, like forgiveness itself. Weeks later in Ethan's office, Tommy's crayon note hung framed on the wall behind his desk. Visitors often asked what it meant. He never explained, but every time he looked at it, he remembered the night a little boy's words turned a ruthless CEO into a man brave enough to love again. And every time he left work early, to make dinner or to help with homework, or to simply sit in that small apartment that once had been a stranger's home, he smiled knowing that some of life's most powerful decisions begin with the simplest of sentences. Mom, don't cry today. I'll be brave for you.
Sometimes it's not the grand gestures that change a life, but a few words scribbled in blue crayon. A note meant to comfort a mother that found its way into the hands of a man who'd forgotten what compassion felt like. Ethan learned that success means nothing if it costs you your heart. And Claire discovered that strength isn't about standing alone, it's about letting someone stand beside you. Because sometimes, being brave doesn't mean fighting the world. It means opening the door when someone finally knocks. Narrator. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Between Raindrops Stories. Every week we share stories about love, forgiveness, and the quiet miracles that remind us we're never really alone in the rain.